Hello, and welcome to the Applied Leadership Coaching Podcast, the first inaugural podcast of 2018. My name is Jason Neiman, and I am with Good Brand Company, and we are going to be talking today with Tim Gustafson, and he is the owner and chief coach over at Applied Leadership Coaching, which we'll now refer to as ALC from here on out. Just makes it easy. And I wanted to welcome you today, Tim. We're going to do a series of podcasts over the next 12 months, and we're going to be putting these in, and then hopefully if things go well, we'll continue these on, and if we get a lot of good feedback, we may even add in a few here or there throughout the year that add on to our list that we've currently got scheduled. But I wanted to welcome you today and give you the opportunity to say a few words before we get started.
All right, great. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. I'm excited about the opportunity. I think this is going to be this will be fun, and look forward to connecting with people and sort of providing some thoughts about coaching and ideas about what it is and where we can go with it.
Great. Well, let's get started with some simple things like why did you start ALC? And how long has it been in business, and how did that get kicked off?
Great. So, it's been in business officially for 3 years, but as I look back on this, I've been coaching since I was 8 years old. This is sort of my lifeblood. I mean, this is the thing that it's my calling, if you will. And so I love this. I've done it throughout my entire career. But formally, it's been about 3 years, and I got it started. I guess really I got started with coaching about 12 years ago, and I attended a Georgetown University executive leadership coaching program, and it was fantastic. It changed my life. It brought me to understand what it was that I really wanted to do, and so since then, it's been a path to develop and sort of design how I was going to start this. And 3 years ago, the opportunity was right, and I jumped on it. I haven't looked back since, and I've been having the time of my life for the last 3 years. So it's a wonderful experience for me so far.
That's great. So you spoke about Georgetown a little bit earlier. Tell me more about your background. How did you kind of move into your career, and what are some of the things you did prior to deciding to launch this new company?
Okay, so I've got 2 degrees in geology. I started out as a geologist, a scientist, and got into groundwater modeling and environmental consulting, contaminant transport. Worked on hazardous waste sites, Superfund sites. But the thing that I always did was I worked with people. So I managed a large group of people. I started a small remediation company within the first consulting firm I worked for, and we grew it to 15 people. And the thing I had so much passion about was leading the group. And so that really got me started professionally in the process of leading people and understanding what it meant to coach them and help develop them. And I was really, pretty new and naive at the whole thing, but I learned a lot. And I was in environmental consulting for about 15 years. And I thought, there's more to life than just environmental consulting. Although I had a great career, great experience, and wonderful people I worked with, but I was ready for something different. And so a couple of companies later, I ended up at Capital One and worked in their finance department. And wow, geology to finance, how does that happen? I'm not really sure, but the idea of project management was the thing that brought me to Capital One. And I had a lot of experience with that in my environmental consulting world. And so that then led me into managing a PMO, a project management office, again, leading people who are managing projects. Worked on a $100 million program at Capital One, an internal program. And we had a coach. We had an external coach come in, and he coached me and he coached the executive team. I was the program manager for the big program. And I learned so much from him, and it was such an intense experience. And at times my head was spinning. I was learning so much. But from that, when that completed, I moved into another group, and someone said, Tim, you ought to check out this Georgetown University coaching program. And I said, okay. And and a funny thing happened. So in 2005, my manager, I was in the collections department, again, managing a PMO. And my manager, Scott Darling, said to me, he said, Tim, 2005 would be a great year if ... I said, what do you mean by that, Scott? He said, whatever you want it to mean. So Capital One had allowed us the opportunity to sort of figure out what we needed as individuals to grow and develop.
Wow.
And so one of the things that I wanted to do was to go to this Georgetown program, and they paid for the whole thing, and
wow.
it changed everything for me.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And I'm sure you met some incredible people there as well.
Oh, outstanding. And I still am in contact with them, 12, 13 years later. And yeah, some wonderful people, outstanding teachers and professors, let alone the cohort of 32 that we worked with.
Wow.
So that was it. I got my start there, and then I was with Capital One up until the time I essentially finished the coaching program, and I took a package from them, and I thought, should I start my own business? Which I did, but then I thought, I'm just not ready for this.
Right.
And so I ended up going to Wachovia, moving down to Charlotte, and which turned into Wells Fargo. And again, project management was the thing that brought me down here. And so I worked in the construction department, managing the construction for the Carolinas and Mid-Atlantic, and did that for, been there for 9 years. And all along I was coaching people, inside of work, outside of work kind of thing. And then the time was right. And I started figuring out how should I do this and launch a business. And so I did a lot of research. I got a lot of input from people and feedback. And, I put a business plan together, and I put it out there to about 10 or 12 people. And they came back and they ripped it to shreds. And I thought,
don't they always?
I thought, yeah, right. But, I looked at it and I thought, that's all it is. I can do this stuff that you're saying.
Right.
And so, that was it. And I was ready to move. And so I just had to figure out the timing, and within about 6 months, I was off and running. So.
Yeah. And I can imagine that, coming from the corporate world where, things move slowly and all of those kinds of things, there was probably some nervous energy built up. Can I do this? Is there going to be a steady paycheck? I mean, all of those things come into play. Conversations with your spouse, thinking about, your financial retirement future, all those things come into play, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a risk. Right. At the time I was 53 years old. I'm thinking, wow, this is a big jump. And what do I have? 15, 20 years left in my career or whatever. And but yeah, it's worked out well. I brought my network that I had from Wells Fargo with all the construction world. And that's been sort of my group. There's sort of my peeps, if you will.
Yeah.
Love the people in the construction industry, and I just connect with them well, and that's been my network. And they've supported me, and I've had some great mentors in the industry, and that's been real valuable. So this real estate construction industry is just a fun place to be. Some exciting people that are willing to learn and to grow. And so it's been good. It's not without its stresses and risks, for sure.
Sure. So over the course of the time since you've started ALC, I'm assuming you've had some very interesting clients and some great experiences so far. You want to touch on any of those, or talk about any moments where you felt like, gosh, this made it all worth it for me to make this jump and do something like this?
Yeah. Well, I virtually everybody I coach, I have a wonderful experience with. And, the key for me, the thing why I do this, is to see those light bulbs go off, for somebody to get it. They learned something, and they're growing. And it's, I have one fella who he just had a tremendous experience. It totally turned his life around.
Hmm.
And it's so much fun to be part of that. And it's a privilege to be allowed to be in somebody's life, to be able to see what they're doing and the changes they're making. It's a real privilege for me to do that. And I treasure it. And so as I see those changes happen in people, that's why I do this, is to help people succeed.
That's great. And I'm sure, I mean, obviously you're still in business, so you've been, successful enough to continue this on. And it looks like 2018 is going to be a banner year for you in thinking about all the things you have planned. Talk to me a little bit about the industry so far that you've been working with. And you can do broad brush strokes here, but I'm curious as to, what types of companies you've worked with, and individuals on what level. Kind of go into those things, as I'm certainly curious about that.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm working essentially, for the most part, mid-market kind of companies, medium-sized companies. I think ranges in dollar perspective. Well, I'm coaching individuals as well, but from a company perspective, I think maybe I don't know, $500,000 up to companies that are $100 million. In fact, one company I'm working with, they're in the billions. I mean, it's a huge corporation. So we're sort of all over from that. But the main theme are the construction industry in general. Have certainly worked in other industries as well. The chemical industry is one group. Spent some time with there. And then there's lots of offshoots from the construction industry, manufacturing that provide materials and furniture, carpet, that kind of thing for the construction work. Distributors, again, pretty much aligned with the construction industry. So it's a broad group of folks. Coaching applies to everyone everywhere. It's nice to have an understanding of the industry you're working in, but
Sure.
Coaching is about the individual. And I'm coaching lots of different kinds of individuals, CEOs of companies, owners of companies, CFOs, sort of that C-suite.
Right.
And then the general managers, I'm coaching mid-managers, and then folks that work for them. One of the fun things, so that's coaching the individuals. One of the fun things that I've really enjoyed is team coaching. So, the leader of a group, like a CEO, and then those that work for him. And to be in the middle of that kind of an environment is so fascinating. It's so complex. There's so many dynamics.
Right.
Everybody's got an agenda, and so it's fun, and I'm enjoying it.
So that's a great segue to the idea that there's all these different people. There's the C-suite who, by design, are complex individuals, and I'm sure there's in thinking about that, there's different types of coaching. And so why don't you give me sort of the idea of there's a lot of different types of coaching. How do you position yourself as a coach? When you use the word coach, a lot of people might say, if you ask 10 people, they all might have different examples of a coach in their life or somebody that they've run across. But I'm curious, from your perspective and from your direction, how do you explain what you do? And I know that's a broad question, but talk to me about the different types of coaches, and then give me sort of your sweet spot where you really fall in and what makes you special.
Okay, excellent. Good question. There are so many different kinds of coaching. I focus on executive leadership coaching, helping people to be better leaders. But there, obviously there's the athletic coach and coaches. There are folks that somebody said, I went to a conference one time, and they said, you're going to find some people at this conference that are there to coach people on how to better organize their closets. And I thought, wow, okay. But I think the big differentiator in coaching is it's not consulting. I'm not telling people how to do it or what to do. Because the idea around coaching is really that it's an inside out learning. And so that's not me telling people and teaching them outside in. it's they've got to learn it themselves. So I do that through a series of questions, inquiry, to really understand what is going on inside and to help them to see it as they verbalize. So
Right.
they've got to think. Coaching, to be coached is not an easy thing. It's hard work.
For sure.
And so my key is to ask the right questions at the right time so it hits them. They then catch on, oh, all right, now I see what's going on here, what this is about, what I have to do in order to grow and to learn.
Right. Right. And I would guess, different people's personalities mean that they respond differently to those things. Some people take longer, people get it right away. I mean, are you experiencing that in general with people? I mean, is that something that happens on a very regular basis that obviously everybody's different, but the reactions to you obviously are critical to the way that you coach, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the things that sort of back to your question previously, but one of the things that I bring is the ability to be trusted. That is such an important part of coaching. Um, if I can't be trusted by the person I'm coaching, we're not going to get very far because
Right.
this is a deep kind of work. It's not a superficial, quick conversation. We get into some pretty detailed discussions about their life, what they've got going on. It's a confidential thing, so I'm not going to be talking about details from one person to the next about our coaching experience or what they're
Right.
working on or what we're working on, kind of thing. So, yeah, in order to really for this to be successful, it requires a deep personal trust between one and the other. And as that happens, then all sorts of different concepts and ideas can open up, and that's critical, and that's the key because we have to take risks in order to learn,
Right.
and
Sure.
being trusted then is an important aspect of that. So that's really where we start, I think, is really developing that trust. Now, sometimes, as you say, it takes a lot longer for some people to catch on to it than others.
Right.
I've worked with people where 3 or 4 months go by and it doesn't seem like we're getting very deep. It's pretty superficial,
Right.
and then all of a sudden something happens. The right questions asked, or they get it, and then they start diving deep, and it really
Right.
becomes a very valuable experience for them. Some people get it right off the bat. Um, we have tools that we use as well to help folks, sort of dive into it more quickly. Um, but still, it takes some, we have to be humble. We've got to accept that we've got to grow and learn, and we're not the end all be all, right? We've got to
Sure.
figure it out and keep moving. So,
You talked about tools earlier, just a few minutes ago, and then you just mentioned it again. And it's interesting because in this day and age of technology, technology can really help an organization become more productive. But even in my business, we find that it also separates people a little bit and doesn't allow people to expand their personal relationships with people. There's many times with my team where I'll say, those 15 messages back and forth on Google Hangouts that took 30 minutes to get the information back and forth to each other. Had you just picked up the phone and had a 3-minute conversation with that person, it would have been resolved and it would have been much less complicated. But we are devolving, I think, in some ways into those personal relationships. And I think when you talk about trust, the ability to connect with somebody and have them trust you without a technology barrier in between, that is becoming more and more of a lost art form. I mean, look at the way we're doing this interview. We're doing it, over Skype. We're recording it. We could be in the same room, but it would be a lot more complicated, and the audio would not be as good, and all those things. But you see where I'm sort of getting at, and I'm curious, as you're working with these companies, do you find that some of the coaching that you're doing is around that personal relationship that they're having with their colleagues, people that work for them, people that are their, bosses or superiors on the chain of command? are you having a lot of discussion around that and how to interact with each other in a more professional or more I don't know if professional is the right word, but in a more connected way? That's probably the better word for that.
Yeah, when it comes to technology, I'm not sure that we're having a lot of discussions around technology versus the face-to-face connections.
Right.
But the connection is obviously that is the key, is helping them to be better connected with their people in different ways, allowing their personalities to be out. I think the biggest barrier that people have is themselves.
Mm.
Right. I think in large part we are our own worst enemy. Right.
Funny, my wife tells me that all the time.
I understand.
Yeah, right.
No, I think, we get into habits and we have ways of doing things and we think, oh, wow, I've been doing it this way for 10 years. Of course, it's a good way to do it. I'm successful. And that right there is the issue, because then we've sort of shut ourselves down to opening up and growing and learning. And so that really is where our work is done, because this coaching is all about self-awareness. And it's about us understanding ourselves and how we're connecting with others or how others are perceiving us. And to get that and to understand this perception that somebody else has of me is so important as an individual.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Back to the tool thing, if I could.
Yeah, sure.
I thought, yeah. So when I was growing up and as I was just starting into my career, I started taking some of these personality tests and so forth. And both my mom and dad come from social work backgrounds. And my mom's got a master's in social work, and my dad has a bachelor's. And so, at the time I was taking these tests, my dad said to me, he said, I've never trusted those tests because it puts you in a box.
Right.
And, that has stuck with me. These tools are fantastic. All the tools that are out there help us to some degree to understand ourselves better. Sure. Some are better than others, obviously, but they're not a complete thing. And so if they were, there would be no need for coaching, right? Because a tool could tell us everything we need. But So I think there's always a little bit of wariness that I have about some of the tools, in that, it's not the end all be all. It's not the thing that tells us everything about ourselves. And we can't be put in a box. We're much more complicated and complex than that. Sure. The human mind and heart are so fascinating, and there's so much to them. So I just wanted to toss that out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. So from a value or a benefit of coaching then, for somebody to really get down to the core of it, when it comes to that and figuring out the value of that, what should somebody look for? I mean, what do you look for to say, I got real value out of that? Or, what's the benefit going to be ultimately for me?
The benefit is by the individual. It's about growth and development. And the value is only, I can't determine the value for somebody else of coaching. They have to determine it for themselves.
Right.
And, the coaching relationship, there's got to be some kind of connection and electricity. And I think that's the first indication that, okay, something can happen here. But as we progress, as in the time in which we're coaching, there's got to be some growth and development. There's got to be some change, something that says, wow, this is worth my time that I'm spending and the time I'm working on this. It's worthwhile because I can see the results in how I feel, or in the better connections that I'm having with other people, or I'm able to let go of something that I've been holding on to for a long time, or I am accomplishing that goal that we set out to do. So
that's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
As somebody's thinking about it, let's say that I'm a CEO or I'm a human resources manager or someone like that, and they decide, okay, I'm going to engage in a coaching relationship. I think our team would really benefit from that, what are some of the questions that they should really be thinking about? Because obviously making that choice does not come easily, because it makes you look inward. It's a hard discussion. It's a financial expense for a company. There are lots of things to think about as you go through the chain of, should we hire a coach, or could we go on the internet and find out the answers ourselves? Take a Myers-Briggs test or something and then share it with everybody and decide that everybody's going to interact with each other in a better way. There's all those things that companies do on a regular basis. So tell me a little bit about how they engage with the right coach. And then as a follow-up to that, how do you know that it's right for your company to get into an engagement with a coach like yourself or someone else to sort of move your organization forward?
Okay, that's a great question, because I think, as a CEO, I probably really don't know a whole lot about coaching. In general, that's what I find. There are some that are very sharp and have been coached. They really get it and understand it. But, from a general perspective, I think, number one, you have to be able to trust the person. Do you really trust them?
Right.
Because you're turning your company and your people over to them in a way. So one, can I trust them? I think secondly, what kind of venture are we going after here? Is this a gig that's going to last for 6 months, a year, 10 years? I mean, what are we trying to accomplish here? So one, what is the goal of coaching? What am I trying to get out of this? So if it's individual one-on-one, helping them to grow and develop as individuals, to be better performers, to be better managers, leaders, whatever that happens to be. Or if I'm looking at it from a team perspective, hey, I'm having some communication challenges amongst my team. A coach can come in and help out with that and be in the middle of working meetings to really understand and help people to be more effective interacting one with another. So I think those are some of the key things that we got to think about: is communication, trust. Where is it that we're going to go with this? And how do I get there? Now, there are, I'm involved in a International Coaching Federation, a coaching group that is a professional organization. We have certifications. There are 3 levels of certification: the associate certified coach, professional, and then a master certified coach. I'm a professional certified coach. Okay. Each of those have certain levels of competency, if you will, based on experience and on training and things of that nature. It's like 100 hours, 650 hours, and then I think it's 2,500 hours for the master certified coach. Okay. So, that's one way to say, oh, well, this person does have some experience. They've been doing it for a while. It's documented, it's recorded, and it's a professional organization. There are a lot of people that will call themselves coaches, but they're really consultants. And they're telling people how to do things. And not that that's not of value. That we need people that are our mentors and can help us to be better and have had that experience. But it's the type of learning that we want to have. Do we want to have inside out learning or outside in? What's going to be a longer lasting kind of approach? The other part of this.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, in relation to that, consultants, you would hope consultants have some knowledge or thought behind that industry that those people are consulting within, unless it's sort of like, let me teach you how to be a better CEO. Whereas I think a coach comes in and it really doesn't matter what industry it is. It matters on how they approach the relationship with you, the trust factor that you have with them, and how they get you to the point of figuring out who you want to be. At least that's what I would think. Yes. How to be a better leader, how to be a more productive leader, how to be a better team player in the realm of what you're doing. And I'm not sure that consultants really give you that. What consultants, and in all fairness, I do a lot of consulting, so our job is to analyze what's going on as a consultant and then provide some feedback that will allow a company to grow. I think where you come in and where a coach comes in is developing that so that they can grow and taking those types of results. So maybe there's some conjunction where, a consultant may come in and give some information, but it's sort of like, to your point, they're coming from the outside in, and they're bringing that to you. Bringing on a coach allows you to develop a better way of processing that and then acting upon it. Is that a good explanation of how that works, maybe?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's right on target. And I think coaching or leadership, I should say, is an individual thing. I mean, how many books are there out there on leadership? Millions
Right.
of books and articles
Sure.
on leadership, and not one of them is right. Right?
Right.
They're all
Yeah.
opinions about things,
Sure.
and so it is all about the individual and the way they lead. So they've got to understand themselves better. Back to the self-awareness piece. And as I do that, then I can lead in the way I need to lead in my situation, giving my circumstances.
Right.
And we can go out and we can do training, a one-time shot, and teach people from an outside in, this is what leadership is, quote unquote. But it's the coaching that is every month or every couple of weeks that we get together and we talk and we continue to push it forward. And so it's this longer, it's a process. It's not an event. It's something that happens over time.
Right.
We learn so much better when we have to experience it, and we have to struggle through it and try different things. And so that's where the coaching comes in. So I think you're right about that conjunction. A little consulting up front, use that information, and then you take it forward with the coaching.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned to me in the past as we've had our discussions is there's an interesting correlation between coaching and therapy, right? And so again, we talk about the fine line of definition, but kind of talk through that a little bit. Give us some insights as to, because there seems to be some crossover when you're talking to somebody and you want to get them to trust you, and you want to get them to, think differently about the way they're approaching a personal relationship or personal relationships. How does that differ, the therapy action versus the coaching action?
That's great. I one time, one of the people I was coaching, they said, "You're really like a business therapist, aren't you?" So, but I think when it really truly comes to therapy and counseling, that's really for those that have mental health disorders and significant mental health challenges, and that is not what coaching is about. That is not my profession. That is not something I'm schooled or trained in.
Right.
But I understand where that line is, and I understand it because I've experienced it, and I've been with an individual who was having some mental health challenges, and I began a coaching process with them, and it didn't last very long because I recognized that this is not what I'm doing. It's not what I'm about, and you really need to have some help in a different way, and somebody
Sure.
that is trained and schooled in depression and other things. So, there is a line there, and we don't want to, do something that we aren't supposed to be doing. And
Right.
certainly from a coaching perspective, I've been there. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, do we go deep with people and get into some feelings and emotions? Absolutely. That's part of the process. But, truly these mental health disorders, when somebody is having some imbalance in some way or other, that's a different animal. So the coaching is really for the mentally healthy. It's really about performance, about self-awareness, improvement, being able to accept feedback and move with it. It's these areas that we, just trying to be more effective. That's really where the coaching is a great fit for.
Now, do you find that from a coaching perspective, it's good to sort of go back in history with an individual, like a therapist would do, to figure out what makes that person tick? And do you use those methods to be able to move them into a new way of thinking, or support the positive things that they're doing?
Yes, absolutely. So much of what we learned we learned when we were so young.
Right.
And we all have these backgrounds that we come forward with. We bring them, and they can be baggage, or they can be great things,
Right.
And but the key is to understand it. And there are things that I'll bring up a funny one for me is, my parents grew up in the Depression, and they didn't have a lot to eat and so forth. And so I grew up with the Clean Plate Club
Right.
process. And so, we had to have clean plates when I was growing up because we were not going to waste any food. And, still to this day, I'm 56 years old. Still to this day, I struggle with the Clean Plate Club. I have to clean my plate. It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's not good for me. It's not healthy that I do that, but I do it. And so I think about these things that are baggage that we carry forward and why.
Right.
Is it to honor my parents? Is it because it's a habit? How can I let go of that? And so it's just a funny little example, but
Sure.
these things are, we do bring them, and we carry them for whatever reason. And sometimes, we do need to let go of them, but other times, hey, it's really healthy and it's great things that we've learned, and we do want to carry those forward.
Right.
So the key is being intentional about what we're doing and understanding it.
So from an intentional standpoint, then that could lead us really well into maybe having a discussion about the methods that you use. How do you approach and conduct your coaching sessions? How do you get to that?
Excellent. Good question. The agenda for the coaching comes from the person being coached. I don't come with the agenda to say, well, today we're going to be working on X, Y, and Z and so forth. They have to bring the agenda. And for some people, that is really, really hard.
Right. I'm paying
So
you. Why aren't you coming to me with the solution? Right? You probably get
exactly,
that. Yeah.
exactly, all the time. Yeah, yeah. Teach me something. No, no, that's not what this is
Right.
about.
Right.
And when you do have to come with something, you struggle with it. And some people
Sure.
really struggle. But again, once they start getting the hang of it and understand that, oh, okay, now I see where we're going with this, and I am struggling with delegation to my employee, or I'm struggling with having this conversation about their performance. How do I have that conversation? And so then I start asking the questions, and it's all about question after question after question, getting them to think and them to verbalize. So for me, one of the key techniques, I use this often and I preach about this quite a bit, is to be present, open, and connected. And so I need to be present with them in the coaching session. I need to be open to whatever they're saying and connected with where they are.
Right.
So listening is so important, and it has to be listening that's an intuitive kind of listening. It's not subjective where, this low level where you say something and I take it in, oh, let me tell you how it affects me.
Right.
It's the opposite of that. So listening is so important, and then being able to verbalize back with questions, and maybe it's, let me tell you what I just heard you say.
Right.
And repeating back something to them. And we talk about feelings. We talk about how it affects the body. What's going on with you in the body? Well, my neck is tight, or my hips are tight, or whatever it is.
Right.
I get these headaches, and so much of our challenges and issues that we have is stress. And
Sure.
much of our stress is merely thoughts that we have.
Right.
And we create the stresses amongst ourselves, within ourselves. And so these techniques it's an intuitive kind of thing. Certainly I bring models and mental models and concepts that I've understood and learned over the years. But it's really about understanding where the people are at and what they have going on, so that I can ask those questions to help trigger something in them, so those light bulbs can start going off.
Got it. And do you also use technology in your businesses in working with people? Do you use tools that allow people to figure things out that give a basis point?
We do, yeah. So I think one of the best tools that I have found in the industry, it's called Leadership Circle Profile. And it is a tool that helps people understand their leadership skills, their competencies, and the tendencies that they're holding on to that might be reactive in nature. We want to move to a creative place where we're able to be, working on purpose and vision and integrity and teamwork, mentoring, developing others as a leader. Those are the things that are really valuable and important, and ingratiate other people. When we're in a reactive mode, that's not a great place to be. Not that it's not productive, but from a leadership perspective, it's not real beneficial. So this tool, this leadership circle profile tool, is really powerful. So we use that. It's a 360 assessment. So we get feedback from others. You take the self-assessment as well. You compare the two, and you see gaps. And these gaps are places where we might coach to. Again, back to if it's something that's important to the person being coached.
Right. Based on their position or where they want to be or whatever, in their place in the team, whatever it might be, right? That makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, in these relationships, do you work by yourself or do you have other consultants, coaches that you bring along that you have on your team? Is that something that you're building as time goes on?
Yes, it is. In fact, I've got a group of 5 other coaches that are sort of my cadre of coaches. They're not actual employees of ALC. They are, people that I know, I trust, I understand. They're fantastic coaches. Range from ACCs to MCCs. Most of them are master certified coaches. They've been schooled at Georgetown. These are all Georgetown University grads or professors that were there that actually I was schooled under. So I've got a group of people that are valuable and helpful. And we've had a couple of big clients where we've had 25 people that we've been coaching, and I can't coach that many. I think my capacity is about 25 or 30 at the most at one time. So right. When we have that many, we tend to spread it out and get some other folks to provide input. And it really is important for me to have people to bounce things off of sure. when we're doing team coaching. And we had several teams with this big client. And so we worked back and forth and came up with great models and ideas of things to coach with and to help them to learn and to grow. So we use multiple different techniques as a result of having the different folks involved and different perspectives, and that was really valuable for us. So that's a model and a process that will continue forward as we continue to work with companies.
And I'm sure when it comes to trust and connections, sometimes one coach may not connect with somebody, or the personalities just don't work. Although you're one of the most easygoing guys I've ever met, I'm not sure how people wouldn't be able to connect with you. But I guess if you see that you've got a client that it's just not working, or you're not getting the results that you expect, you could turn to one of these people and say, hey, look, you're very different. Your approaches are very different. That may work better with this individual. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. And not everybody is going to connect with Tim Gustafson, although I would love to think that they would, but I'm not so naive to think that that's the case. So we've got, in fact, we have 2 females. We have 3 other men, and they're spread out. One's in San Diego, one's in Utah, 2 are here in Charlotte with me, one's in Eastern North Carolina. So we're, sort of spread out. They've got all sorts of different backgrounds and so forth, and very different personalities. Sure. And different experiences, and so that provides options for people, and depend upon the situation and what is desirous for them.
That's great. I guess we should probably we're running at a really good time right now. I want to be mindful of this, so let's wrap it up. And I'd like to ask you. I always like to try to end one of these with something that is useful or people can continue to move it. So first of all, let's talk about your website where people can find out more about you. I do know you're working on a new website, which will be a lot of fun, and you're doing some new things there. And we might just be helping you with that. Go figure. But talk about, are there any books that people could read that, might get you there a little quicker? Anything, any learning tools? So let's do your website first. How to contact you or reach out to you, and then any ideas or thoughts on things for people to read or watch or anything like that.
Excellent, great, good question. And Jason, before I finish, I want to thank you for this. This is it's been good experience and enjoy connecting with you. So thanks for your questions and your input here.
Sure.
So yeah, I can you can contact me by going to my website, appliedleadershipcoachingllc.com, or you can email me, Tim Gustafson at appliedleadershipcoachingllc.com, and I'll be more than happy and look forward to connecting with you.
Great.
As you said, sort of the website is being updated here. Looking forward to I'm working with Jason and you and your group, and looking forward to that coming to refresh the site.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be great.
Yeah, but I think from a perspective of a takeaway here, I've been reading I don't know how many books I've read in the last 3 years. It's my volume of reading has gone up tremendously, and I'm thrilled about it. Lots of different books out there to read. I've focused a lot on trust over the last couple of years. In fact, I'm reading a book right now about trust, and it's so many great thoughts and ideas and different perspectives that are brought forward. I think the biggest book that's helped to change me and understand things better is Mastering Leadership. It's put together and put out there by the folks that put together the Leadership Circle profile. Okay. And Bob Anderson and Bill Adams. And so mastering leadership is there's a lot to that, and it helps to sort of sink your mind around the idea of reactive and creative learning and growing. And that's been a valuable book. So that might be something for people to think about.
Okay. Well, awesome. Tim, this has been great. You've been awesome, as always. And I really look forward to our next podcast in the series, video podcast. And we'll be posting this on Tim's website. We'll be putting it in some other areas. I'm sure if you're connected with Tim already, you'll be seeing it on an eBlast or something like that. But we're going to continue this series. And like I said, the next one's going to be on trust. We're really looking forward to that. And we will see you next time on the ALC video podcast. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Jason.